seconds, right? Okay. Well, good to go? I think we are. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Those words were brought up in our Declaration of Independence, where this concept, the social contract, as Grady talks about, was pretty much explicitly laid out. It said that governments have powers to create benefits for the people and to take away certain freedoms. But where do they get these powers? From the agreement of the people, or more likely, from the rights of the people. People's right to agree to do certain things. It is because the social contract in and of itself inherently negates the resolution, and that when we use the social contract to affirm the resolution, we create a blank check for government abuse that we have to negate the resolution. So before we get started, I want to bring up 2 points of resolutional analysis, just looking at the resolution as a whole, seeing what it really means. The first analysis you can tag as big picture. Instead of just viewing this resolution through isolated examples, which can give us some insight, but fail to really provide us with an accurate view of the resolution, what we need to do is take a step back and look at this resolution in its entirety. And the best way to do that is to analyze the approach countries take to this resolution as a whole, which leads me to the resolutional analysis point 2, conflict is in the approach. And of these big picture instances, when we look at how countries and places evaluate this resolution and the biggest issues our world is facing, the conflict is in the approach. They could choose to approach an issue and say, we need to provide for the public right now. Or they can approach the issue and say, we need to protect rights, which will then create a societal benefit. Which leads me to my value for today's round, which is societal benefit. And that's essentially defined as essentially the goal of the social contract. And that's why I brought it up as a value in this round. It's because Grady brought you a value of the social contract. And we both agreed that the existence of the social contract, its existence and its goal is to benefit society. So that's really the highest value in this round. And so what we'll be doing throughout my case is we'll be looking at, when we take a big picture view of the resolution, private property rights are the only way to truly benefit society. And then secondly, we'll take a look at Grady's case and see how this idea of the social contract, essentially the goal is private property rights, but when we make it a public needs a goal and take an affirmative view of the resolution, we create a blank check for government to sign. But now let's go ahead and get into my first contention, and I believe my only one, which is that private property rights benefit society. And private property rights, putting them first essentially, benefits society because of subpoint A. Public needs sustain poverty. And where I'm pulling this from is because according to the United Nations Millennium Project, half of the world's population lives on less than $2 a day. And 50,000 deaths per day occur worldwide as a result of poverty. This is the literal biggest issue where these two approaches come into conflict. This in and of itself is the biggest issue within the round, is the thing we have to look at first, because it affects over half of the world's population, and therefore is the biggest place where these two things come into conflict. So let's see what happens in subpoint A of public needs sustaining poverty. According to the president of the American Policy Center in November of 2012, most of the current anti-poverty efforts focus on redistributing funds. This system ignores the fact that tomorrow the poor need to be fed again. And each time, the poor recipient is only temporary help as the taxpayer or donor becomes poorer themselves. More and more money goes to feed the machinery of poverty than gets into the hands of the intended poor. Such a system sustains poverty rather than eradicates it. Essentially what happens is the government creates a hammock instead of a safety net. The people don't fall down and bounce back up. They stay in that hammock and rest as we throw more and more money at the problem. Ever since Lyndon B. Johnson declared war on poverty, we've spent $22 trillion fighting it. And the Heritage Foundation reports that there has not been a single net percentage increase in the, or decrease essentially, in the amount of people in poverty. We throw money at the problem. We try to provide for the public in the best way we can by taking away people's money, and it doesn't work. Which leads me to subpoint B. Private property rights are the only path out of poverty. And private property rights are the only path out of poverty because, as the American Policy Center reported in November 2012, eradication of poverty in the world will never come from endless aid designed for mere existence, nor will it come from simply providing jobs. The answer to poverty in the world will come only from providing the tools needed to create new independent wealth. The solution to end poverty is private property ownership, and for the government to get out of the way. The reason for this is it takes the hammock away. It gives people the power, empowers them to actually go out and do better, to go out and make a life for themselves. But when governments put regulations and taxes and throw money at the problem, they're creating a hammock. Take away the hammock, and then people are empowered to take action in and of themselves. The impact here is In the big picture, private property rights are the only solution. This is the biggest issue in today's realm. But now let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Grady's case. And his value of social contract. We talked about it already exists to benefit society, so societal benefits are highly value. But then it's contingent one. We talked about how the social contract is necessary. And these are a couple points I want to bring up. I want to talk about what the social contract looks like from a negative point of view, and then what it looks like from an affirmative point of view. So my first response, you can tag as government defines. Now, government defines what the freedoms, what the benefits are. We talked about this in cross-examination, that government codifies law, which then upholds the social contract. So government laws proposes the freedoms and the benefits in these issues. That's why he said in subpoint A that benefits are unavoidable, because the government defines what they are. So let's look at what the government definition of public need is. In 1977, the only official report on the public need was done by a Filer Commission on Private Philanthropy and Public Need. And they took 400 pages, and in these few pages right here, defined exactly what the public need was. And what did they find? It wasn't something simple that you could put into a sentence. In fact, it took about 12 pages, and there were 36 facets of it, ranging from aesthetic experience to mental health to physical health to cultural experience. Essentially, the issue here is public need provides a blank check for government. If the government can violate your rights however they want, essentially, under an affirmative point of view, if that's really the goal of the social contract, rather than to protect your rights, it's to provide for the public need, then that creates a blank check on government. And we can see this throughout his own applications. On zoning, gun laws, taxes, airline restrictions, building codes. The reason all of these things exist is that to protect people's lives, which, as Grady agreed in cross-examination, is a private property right. These things exist to protect private property rights. We take that away and start providing for the public need, we see bigger and bigger issues. According to National Review, 86% of federal taxes collected this year are going towards failing welfare programs that have failed to put a dent in the war on poverty, like the $22 trillion we talked about. This is what happens when the government provides for a vague and a broad public need, instead of using the social contract the way it was intended and protecting rights. Thanks.
Okay, let's go ahead and begin. Great speech, Drew. I just have a few questions for you. Let's go ahead and start off. Now, you did agree with my definitions and resolutional analysis, right?
Yes, I'm just saying public needs super broad.
Yeah, I heard your caveats. I agree. So let's go ahead and move on. You would agree that poverty hurts the public need, right?
For sure.
And it's your contention that private property is the best way to get out of the
yes,
poverty.
essentially what I'm saying here is the conflict is in the approach to what we take to benefit society.
Great. So it's your contention that in most places with poverty, private property rights don't exist.
No, I never said that. I'm saying in most places with poverty, the government actually limits private property rights, or the UN or international organizations, they don't take an approach that says private property right ownership is the best way to
How
solve the
exactly do
problem.
they limit private property rights?
Because they take large amounts of other people's money to
No, I understand your point about money. How are they limiting people's private property rights in poverty?
Essentially, sorry if I might have misspoke. That's not exactly what I'm saying.
Oh.
What I'm saying is that these countries, they take an approach. They need to either approach the problem and say we should prioritize private property ownership,
I
prioritize public.
I understand that, and it's your contention that countries that are in poverty generally have chosen not to place an emphasis on private property rights.
Not necessarily countries in poverty, but rather the worldwide approach to poverty.
Nations, places
don't
in poverty,
the worldwide approach
value private property rights enough.
Okay.
Right?
Well, okay, let's take like 10 seconds. But the worldwide approach to poverty essentially prioritizes a public need above private property rights.
Okay, great. That was less than 10 seconds, so thank
Oh,
you. Moving on a little bit. So when nations ought to value private property rights and give these people private property rights, are they taking private property away from other people and redistributing it? How exactly does this work in the real world?
You're saying when they value public need?
When they value private property. If you're giving private property to people, that has to come from somewhere. Where does it come from?
I'm confused a little bit about what you're asking.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on.
Okay.
You would agree that private property refers to the rights of a single individual.
Or a company, a business, an entity, I believe, could also have private property. I think the government owns like nuclear bases
You didn't disagree with my definition.
Not in theory. I thought it said entity. If it said individual, I kind of think that corporations act as individuals in a certain sense, and governments
Fair
do as
enough.
well.
I don't think that would be
Okay,
too much.
good.
Let's go ahead and move on. Now you did disagree that my applications applied to the resolution, but you would agree at very least that they're just.
Well, I actually agree that they're just, and agree that they apply to the resolution.
You just think that they apply to negative because they're protecting private property rights of many different people, right?
Correct.
So we can agree that all of my applications affect a large variety of people.